4:30. I'm gonna call the roll right quick. Commissioner Eden. Here. Caleb Fuquay.
Here.
Commissioner Hogan.
Here.
Mike.
Brown.
Hey, Commissioner Brown.
I thought you said.
Chris Fox.
Here, sir.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. I just asked you a question. For the purpose of the record, these people in attendance, do I need to call their name and get it on the tape?
Yes, and we need a caller forward to identify themselves. The last caller.
This is Chief Head from Robertson County.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
isn't it just a committee meeting?
Well, I sense the importance of this. I would like to have on record for any department heads that may be on there and here, because they was invited. I think it'd be important.
Who's secretary, Ms. Jody? She can record those that are here. They don't have to answer to it. If this is a committee meeting, just a committee meeting.
Well, I don't agree with you, but we'll play by your rules.
Okay,
Well,
so I'm gonna go on ahead. I see there's Donna Riley. She's my employee. There's Tamika Harrison who's on there. Okay, I noticed we got Chet and Patsy Gregory. Joe Fort, Burton Glover, Dennis Wade.
I think it's just important that
I understand
if
this.
somebody came back
They-
and said, well, I would use that to meet.
Okay, I see Trey Fan is on there and Keith Hoover. Right.
Right.
Yeah, he did.
Irvin said he's gonna be in
Terry
person.
Wilson.
Yeah, I'm walking over here right now.
Ready?
I'm ready, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jody. As you probably read minutes, I can take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Hogan,
I'll second.
got a second by Caleb Fuquay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Minutes are filed. I guess you all know the purpose of this meeting. The federal government's part of this ends Thursday. And the county the personnel committee needs to decide what way we're moving forward with this. And I think we got a lot of questions. I've read this thing probably 5 times. And it's not exactly clear as water. That's the reason I asked our county attorney, Clyde Richard, to be here. And Jeff Beamer is here. Hey, Jeff. He is our law-like attorney
Labor attorney.
for labor. And Clyde, I'm gonna turn this thing over to you if you can explain it to where we can all understand what we're looking at here.
Tell me where you want me to be.
Right here at the chair or wherever you're comfortable.
Okay.
I think it'd be on camera, attorney.
Well, the first thing to say is there's been several emails and phone conferences with Jeff, our labor attorney, and Jody, and Mayor Vogel, and myself in the last few days. I think everybody concerned with this realizes that we're learning the rules as we go. No matter what kind of business you're in, what your home, the CDC seems to change daily, and everything else. It's all a learning experience. I can tell you that back in the spring, this committee met and recommended a series of COVID rules and policies to amend the handbook. The federal government had passed a law that was a few pages long that dealt with a lot of this in terms of leave and COVID and benefits for COVID if you were affected. And basically, the resolution we passed last summer, early in the summer, mirrored the federal statute. The federal statute with the benefits and leave, and it expires on December 31st. Now, the resolution that we did working through Jeff, all the county audit people wanted every county to have a COVID policy. And so we worked through Jeff and we ended up with basically a policy amendment to our handbook that mirrored the federal statute. Just like two pancakes, one on top of another, and you couldn't tell them apart. Now, our resolution talked about the local resolution expiring on December 31st. It turned out that the feds have not extended their law. That doesn't mean that we can't do something going forward on our own. We can, and I expect that we will, but the federal guidance and rules about benefits and leave and COVID basically will go away Thursday at midnight. Now, a little confusing part of this is Jeff had also drafted a temporary COVID leave policy and a telecommuting policy. And if you look at the resolution that you approved as a county commission, it had 3 documents attached to it. The largest is the mirror of the federal statute. The next one was this local temporary COVID leave policy, 2 or 3 pages. And the next one was the telecommuting policy, a couple of pages. If you look at the fine print of the resolution we passed, it basically said that all 3 documents, all 3 policies would end on December 31st. And that's because we knew that unless Congress changed their rule, that the one we did that mirrored them would need to end too. We determined in the last few days that the temporary COVID policy that's local and the work from home policy that's local, if you read the fine print, it talks about those continuing until the pandemic is over. So now you've got an apple that ends December 31st and 2 small oranges that don't necessarily have that ending date tied to it. Now, the resolution, though, that encompassed all 3 talks about everything ending December 31st. In all of our discussions, I think that Jeff and Mayor Vogel and Jody and I agree that we maybe have some suggestions about what you want to tweak and look at, but that we need the temporary leave policy to stay in effect. And we need the work from home policy to stay in effect. Because that starts Friday. And it's clear from the minutes of your meeting where all this was done that you intended that to happen. So the resolution needs to be tweaked from back in the early summer. And I think at your January County Commission meeting, we can do that. We can tweak the the COVID policy and the work from home policy. And on paper, at least, we would make it retroactive to January 1st. So what I don't want is some gap where the trap door opens and there's no benefits. So that's a little history. Apologize for playing with my mask. I really dislike these things, but they're required. That's a little history of what we've looked at the last few days, Jody. So the federal statute had a cap of 80 hours of COVID relief that an employee could have. There's been discussion. Now that's in addition to sick and vacation time. That's an extra type of new benefit that's over and above that. There's been some discussion about tweaking what we have in existence, the two smaller COVID relief and work from home, and through this committee determining if you want to start a fresh 80-hour cap beginning January 1. There's pros and cons to doing that. For an employee that's used up their COVID time, that gives them a second bite at the apple because this COVID covers not only the employee, but if their spouse or child gets COVID and they have to stay at home with them, that's covered too. It's not just the employee being sick at home. So one of the questions is, do you want to start a new 80-hour clock beginning January 1st, and maybe end this May 1st, and you can always come back and extend it or shorten it. So that's some first thoughts that I've got. Questions? Jeff, you might want to chime in about where you think we're at.
Sure. I think your summary of the status of the federal law is accurate, Clyde. Let me just add in one of the reasons for having the temporary COVID-19 leave policy and the telecommuting policy. Those were expectations of county audit that if county governments were providing additional paid leave during the pandemic, that those policies needed to be in writing. So that was really the temporary COVID-19 policy pretty much mirrors the grounds for emergency paid sick leave under the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and gives a little bit additional flexibility in case department heads needed employees to work staggered schedules to basically reduce the headcount in the office and ensure proper distancing. The telecommuting policy, based on my discussions with CTAS, the main thing they wanted to have in there was that there was a way for employees to record their time while working remotely. That is a concern about working remotely, that employees have a mechanism to do that so that doesn't subject the county to claims for overtime compensation for employees who are working more than their scheduled hours while they're working at home. So really there was a reason for having both of those temporary policies, and that was that county audit expected county governments to adopt them.
And Jeff, let me ask, going forward, since December 31st is upon us, do we need to tweak, and I think we've agreed we need to adopt some tweaks, but by the fine print, the temporary COVID and work from home would continue on until the pandemic is declared to be over.
Right. So we've got the resolution that was adopted said that all the policies would expire on December 31, but there is language in both of the temporary policies that they would remain in effect for the duration of the pandemic. Of course, I don't think we understood how long the pandemic would be in effect when the policies were adopted. So I think to give you some control over how long those policies would be in effect, I would recommend having a date that they expire on their terms, with the understanding that if they need to be extended, they can be. But I think it gives you a little bit more control over how long that paid leave benefit's going to last. And as far as the telecommuting goes, I think that's, if there needs to be a permanent policy adopted in the instances where telecommuting is appropriate post-pandemic, then that's something that the committee can consider as well. Although I don't know if that's something that's on your agenda tonight, but
And Jeff, let me ask, what I call round one that ends on December 31st, our policy capped an employee leave at 80 hours. I guess the personnel committee and the county commission will need to decide, with round 2 coming up beginning Friday the 1st, will there be a cap for COVID leave or not? And if there is a cap, what cap of hours are you going to set?
So as the temporary COVID-19 leave policy is written, there's not a cap on benefits. So under the federal law that will sunset on Thursday, employees who experience a qualifying event for emergency paid sick leave were entitled to up to 80 hours of paid sick leave for the duration that the act was in existence, even if the employee experienced multiple qualifying events. And there was also, I think we're now talking about just the paid sick leave. There are also additional benefits for expanded FMLA leave that's not part of the county's temporary policy. So I guess what the committee needs to decide is going forward whether there should be a cap on the number of hours of temporary COVID-19 leave an employee is eligible to receive for the duration of the temporary policy. You could mimic what was the benefit entitlement under the federal leave law that will expire on Thursday going forward, make it 80 hours, or you can give yourself some additional flexibility and not have any kind of a cap on the number of hours of COVID-19 leave that an employee would be entitled to. There could be situations where department heads need to have staggered work schedules for their workers to ensure proper distancing in the workplace. For those employees who are able to work from home, as the policy is written, they would not be entitled to COVID-19 leave. I mean, they would continue to work as home pursuant to the telecommuting policy. But for those employees who don't have a position that's conducive to teleworking, that would entitle them to COVID-19 leave. So I think those are the issues. And I think that's something for the committee to consider, whether you want to put a cap of some sort on the number of hours of leave that an employee is entitled to receive.
Do you have any recommendations for the committee, Jeff?
What are other counties doing, Jeff, or other municipals?
You know, I've worked with one other county that they have a similar policy. So the only one I can speak to is what the one I've worked with who's doing the same thing. You know, I think it just gives you some flexibility you know, on the one hand, you want to make sure that folks are working. If they can't be physically present at work, want to try to get them to work remotely if that's possible. And there's even language in the temporary policy about accepting assignments from a different department, if that would be something that could be done while the employee is out of the office. You know, but at the same time, if you put a cap on there, and you know, it really is a safety issue for employees to have them work remotely. You want to encourage that and not run into a situation where you've put a cap on the number of hours and employees, you know, employees aren't going to get paid for part of the time if they're not able to telecommute. So I think that's the issue is, you know, is you want to make sure that everyone is continuing to be productive, but you don't necessarily want to penalize employees who, through no fault of their own, you know, the work schedule needs to be staggered. So I think that's, I still think this, I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer here. I think it's what works best for the county.
So like the 80 hours, that ends on 12/31, what is the other municipal or county government doing? Are they extending it another 80 hours or capping it at something else? Can you give us any insight on that?
Yeah, just the one other county that I'm working with is not capping their leave benefit going forward. That's all I know.
Jeff, let me ask you a practical kind of on the ground question. Suppose a department head wants to stagger their staff. Again, social distancing, reduce the possibility of influx of COVID. Half of the staff goes home. They want to work from home. That they would like to be working, but frankly, given the way the department operates, it's just pretty impossible for them to do much work at home. Either they don't have the right computer, they can't be hooked up to the office for whatever reason. So that time, let's say employee A is off Tuesdays and Thursdays at home. Would that time, forced time at home through the staggering, normally be they're using COVID time, or would it be that especially this applies if you've got a cap, would they not be using COVID time?
Clyde, I think the way the policy is drafted, that would fall under, it'd be a qualifying event for temporary COVID-19 leave. It wouldn't necessarily have been a qualifying event under the federal law that will sunset on Thursday, but there is language in the county's temporary policy that takes into consideration staggering work schedules and employees' eligibility to receive COVID-19 paid leave during that time.
So that employee would continue to be paid their regular wage if the department head, for safety reasons, does a staggering, and even though there's just no work to be done from home.
As the policies is written now, yes, that's the way I read it.
Is any of this up to the department head's discretion?
Mayor, I think that is I think that could be read into the policy. I think that the issue of whether to have employees work remotely or staggered work schedule would be up to the department head's discretion.
Because this is one of those things where one shoe don't fit all. There's some department heads that if they was to stagger, it would really overload the ones that's there. I can see where one department could do that and maybe get by. When this happened the last time, if y'all remember correctly, I shut the office building down. It was easy to stagger then and do all that because of the workload and the public coming in. But I'm not planning on shutting this office down again. And I could see where some offices, well, let's face it, Jeff, it's going to cause a morale problem. I'm just going to say it like it is. That's just the way I am. But I think it is up to that department head because they know their workload. And that's just the way I feel as the mayor. I can't tell an elected department person, elected department head elected by the public, I can't really tell them how to run their office. I think that's their call.
And Jeff, it's been our discussion in the last couple of days that even as to non-elected, you've got several clerks and trustee and various elected offices with the county where, for example, the city doesn't have that mix. But even as to department heads that are not elected, there's been discussion that still those department heads would have the leeway within their own department to make these decisions.
But Clyde, isn't that under the supervision of the mayor? Those that are not elected, all the other offices are under the mayor's guidelines. So he would have to work with the department heads that are not elected.
Well,
and determine what happens in that in that employee situation, right?
The last go around, the departments that are under me cannot stagger. Look at the EMS, solid waste, they can't work with half of them there one week and half of them not. Animal control, they can't do that. Somebody's got to be there 7 days a week feeding them animals.
But
And
we're not complaining that they're working or not working. We're complaining just to set the right ruling and the framework so you can handle the employees. And that's the decision has to be done individually. And the bottom line is, that's the reason you get paid the big bucks.
Well, I'm just saying, last time I could not stagger them.
I know.
them people. I can't tell the ambulance service, just send half of them home 1 week and not, you just can't do that.
Yes.
They're all 7 days a week job. Urban, you want to say something?
Yeah, now, this is obviously a temporary issue unless it's open-ended. So the other issue that I see running into this is, where are we on the pecking order of vaccinations? Because I think that actually may solve some of this. I don't know where we are on pecking order, because I know this is gonna roll out over the next 2 to 6 months or whatever it is. Because if the department, I don't know if we can force people to be vaccinated, I'm not saying that, but if they are, that would say there'd be less need for the COVID leave if the employees were vaccinated, because then your staff would be fully employed. So how do we transition that in this area as this begins to get rolled out?
On the task force call today, the pecking order of the shots and vaccines, the folks inside of this building, way down the list right now. Chance Wentz, he'll echo that.
First responders are the ones receiving.
They're number one.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're number one.
And-
Tomorrow starts nurses.
Starts,
So I don't know where you exactly would follow on the list, but it is gonna be a few months. It's gonna be a month or two out.
the question did come from Springfield today, when their utility workers that are out in the public doing things, when could they get vaccinated? And the health department told them, said, right now, I can't answer that, but it's no time soon.
Well, but obviously, we're trying to quantify people's wages and needs of the department heads and doing that. So like I said, to me, it's a timing issue in my brain. If we're offering 80 extra hours that we're not getting compensated from the federal government on, or reimbursement or funding, it's a funding issue for us because it affects budget in a certain way, assuming we get the same revenue level on taxes, blah, blah, blah. We're no worse off as long as it's not extending past what we're already paying.
Yeah.
But at some point in time, there ought to be a catch that says, hey, listen, if
Yeah.
they've
Before
been
you got here,
vaccinated-
this new temporary one, I think is signed up, Jeff, am I right, till April the 1st?
No, it hasn't.
That hadn't been voted on
No, I
yet.
think, Jeff, we've talked about putting a date on this, either April 1st or May 1st, with the idea the county could then tweak that, either shorten it or lengthen it, depending on the
Depends on the
vaccination
vaccine.
and how we go. What do you think?
I think that's correct. I think as based on the resolution that was passed, I think that the county needs to take action to extend the temporary policy, and I recommend making it for a date certain.
Because things could change.
Who determines the end of the pandemic?
Well, that's why nobody knows the answer to that.
Somebody has to have the
Well,
authority to do something. Is it
depends on-
CDC?
I think it's the World Health Organization actually that declared the pandemic. Now, when it ends is a good question. And that's really a reason to have a date and not worry about a governmental entity or governing body declare the pandemic over.
Isn't some of this information here determined by the end of, based on what I've written down, the pandemic?
and that's
it
the reason
determined?
that we suggest setting
You
a
want to
date.
do the date
Do the
and not,
date, yeah, because that can be,
but isn't that a federal?
no,
Okay.
no, we can set our own date, and we kicked around May 1st just to have a definitive. And again, you can slide earlier, you can extend, but the idea about just rolling till the pandemic's over, I think we all agree that that's 2 months early.
See, I'll use the court system, for example. The state Supreme Court has already ruled that they're not gonna hold court. And, they could come back a month and a half, 2 months later, and all of a sudden start having court again, but then we have, we put, I can't speak for the court system. I don't have no authority over that.
Well, just a minor tweak. We do have court on folks that are in jail. We're still required, our constitutional requirements to have a jail docket and for orders of protection. So like today we had a docket. Well, during January, we'll have our Tuesday jail docket in any cases that are set for orders of protection. Anything civil or anything like first appearances, those types of things will not be, we've already set dates to put those off, but anything that involves victims or people who are sitting in jail with constitutional time clock ticking, we are having court on those. And most of the court officers, from what I understand, they have been vaccinated now. I was talking with some of them today, so I didn't have.
Most of them have judges.
Yeah. The ones I've talked to and some of the older ones, I think, were some of the very first ones last week that some of them got vaccinated yesterday. So.
To spin off what he said with juvenile court, we still have to host in-person court for emergency proceedings. That could be removals against the constitutional rights of a parent to raise their child as they see fit. And then after hours detention, we have to come back within 72 hours to have that detention hearing because that affects the freedoms and liberties of a juvenile.
Due process.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else, like trial matters, are deferred under the Supreme Court order or suspended rather, but we do have to conduct those emergency hearings.
And let me add to what Judge Perry said. I think Judge Perry, for budgeting purposes in the general sessions in juvenile court, Judge Perry is a department head for that purpose. The discussions we've had about the COVID hours and the working from home and the staggering, that would apply, at least as we've discussed, to juvenile and general sessions court staff. So that's, that has been the discussion.
The only thing that I would see that would differentiate is this building on this side could be open, but courts could still be closed under Supreme Court order until the Supreme Court deems it safe to do in person. Just like they've been able to regulate us how many people we could have in the courtroom, up to 10 or 50% of capacity. We went through various stages of what we could do, but at all times it had to be masked, it had to be 6 feet apart. I don't know if any of you ever drove by, but they would be dotted in lines outside 6 feet apart. The court section is marked off, the seating. I know when you host the county commission meetings, you can see, and that's all by Supreme Court. If we do anything different, then we're subject to sanction through the Supreme Court, or more particularly the Court of Judiciary.
And there has been one judge that got reprimanded because he had not done anything to mitigate for COVID.
Have you seen anything, Urban, come through the pipeline as far as what you're hearing, as far as recovery of any COVID?
No, I haven't dived in. I don't know if anybody here's dived into the new. I have only seen pieces and parts, but I have not read that. I guess it's a $5,000 page document or some crazy thing.
You talking about the one that's pending right now?
Yeah.
I have not seen. Because I know states and local governments was one of the fights, but I don't think they got much in this thing. Maybe something in there, but I don't think it's a lot.
Mr. Mayor, do we need a motion to take this to the county commission?
Yeah.
You need a motion. I need a motion. What you agree on this temporary COVID plan, if there's gonna be a cap or not. And
So we need something for a cap, either April 1st or May the 1st. Is
You
what
need
Clyde
to
suggested.
decide, number one, if you want to cap the hours
Like we had.
of pay beginning January 1. That's question number one. Then question number two is, what's the date that you want to put as a is the deadline, at least for now, with the idea you can re-examine, but we all agree you need a date to start.
I'm under the impression that the 80 hours that are being issued now in this period will be wiped out at the last day of the year. Is that correct?
Yes.
It all starts over.
Starts
again.
over.
And
Well, it doesn't start over. It's the federal leave entitlement is over. So there's no more 80 hours of federal leave. The only thing that is in the appropriations bill that the president just signed is that employers can continue to allow employees who have not exhausted their paid leave entitlements under the federal legislation. They can continue, employers can voluntarily provide those benefits to their employees and continue to receive the tax credit through March 31, 2021. But that doesn't help the county because local governments were entitled to the tax credit for the paid leave entitlements. So there's no restarting the 80-hour clock. It's gone. And it's even for employees who didn't use that leave, for employers who opt in and voluntarily provide it in the first quarter of 2021, the 80 hours doesn't roll over. It's for folks who didn't use some or all of their 80 hours in calendar year 2020 while the act was in effect. So there's no rollover of 80 hours into 2021.
Bob, we do start over.
We start over.
we start over. But I thought I heard him say that if you use 50 hours in this year, come 2021,
No.
based on the federal,
The discussion has been that if an employee used 50 hours of COVID leave in 2020, there would not be a rollover of hours into 21.
another 30 hours.
No,
Stop.
that we would start over and you're gonna decide if you wanna start with another 80 between now and May 1, or if you wanna pick May 1 and not put a cap, but it's a fresh start. It's not a rollover.
Okay.
It's like Clyde said, everybody gets a new apple.
But it sounds like to me, really, the issue here, although we want to be good to our employees, is we want to make sure that we provide the services and have the department heads have the flexibility to manage their employees, make sure that they keep their employees, which is a real issue these days, is keeping employees. So you want to keep your employees, because the competition's fierce out there. So I would move that we take the capital off and we revisit it. The sunset on it would be April the 1st.
Let me clarify something. I said I wouldn't shut this office down again. I shouldn't say that. I don't know what I can do, but hey, I'm not planning on it. The way we're doing right now, we're doing business for the county. Everybody's coming in with the mask. It's like I told the guy, he fussed at me because he had to come in mask. I said, look, buddy, I'm not making you wear a mask for you. I'm doing it for my employees. As far as I'm concerned, he going in and lick the doorknobs, but I did it for the employees. So I'm hoping I won't never have to shut this office down. Now, if 70% of us come up with COVID-19, then we'll probably have to, do something. But right now, I'm not planning on shutting this office down.
I mean, don't put the 80-hour cap on, just
Yeah, in other words,
end it
take
on
the cap
April
off,
1st.
but it sunsets on April the 1st unless it's revisited.
Okay, then I think basically, Jeff, can we say that the motion would be this FFCRA portion that we passed in June on resolution 0615200060, that we would go ahead and eliminate pages 1 through 7 because that's the federal FFCRA that's going away, and that we would continue on with pages 8, 9, and 10, and 11, which is the temporary COVID we've been talking about, with no cap on the hours.
Yeah. So yes, Jody, you wouldn't. The policy is written on the temporary COVID-19 leave policy does not have a cap on the number of hours an employee can receive. So really, the only modification for that proposal would be for the county's temporary COVID-19 policy to sunset April 1, 2021.
Okay, is that what you're wanting to do?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because I think we're gonna have to know a lot more about the vaccination issues within the next 4 months. If we don't have a really good understanding, or 3 months, and it's April the 1st, we should have a much better understanding of the rollout and the applications. And I think the department heads will be able to come back, or the Supreme Court, or where, and the various assets will be able to come back and say, hey, listen, more people are vaccinated, this is really not an issue now, but we can have a good understanding, but I sure hate to hamstring them over 3 months and not being able to provide services and or stagger and or deal with the public as they need to deal with the public.
Let me say that one of the reasons we've got so far vaccinating right now in Robinson County, one that's been offered, only 50% is taking advantage of it. Yeah. So that spread the vaccine out.
So,
60
Joey, if you're
60%.
reading it correct, the motion, there's no cap on the hours.
Same as the policy we currently have in place.
Minus
Yeah.
80 hours.
Minus
the 80
the
hours.
FFCRA 80 hours. Well,
I will, if that is in form of a motion, then I will second that motion, and I want to open the floor with a question.
Okay, you got a second. What's your question?
Question is this: of the past period of time that we've gone between when it started to December the 31st, how many employees in this county used the 80 hours of their funding? How many capped out? And
nobody's
did
capped out
everybody
that I'm
use it?
aware of unless, is Russell in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Has any of yours capped out? And you actually probably had the most.
I've maybe out of 55 employees, maybe
8.
6 to 8 probably at most. Thing is, our employees are on 24 hours.
Yeah, that's
But
not
they
a fair
did cap
question,
out.
Russ.
But you have an exceptional group.
Yeah, I mean, we're encountering, 6 COVID patients a day.
Yeah, I understand that part. Yeah.
How many total employees have got that? I mean, you have an idea of some hours?
Maybe a fifth of the employees. It's-
15,
I've got
okay.
like 2 out right now. It hasn't been, detriment to the service at all, but bound to happen just when you go with that.
I'm just making
population.
an assumption, if we have a lot of people capping out, some people may be taking advantage
Well,
of
that's-
that 80 hours. But
Yeah, that's-
because of the period of time here, and we're not doing it, he's an exceptional group, I can see where it would work and people are doing like they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I have no
asking-
problem with not putting a cap on. But if we've had a lot of caps going in, I would put a cap on it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, asking Russ is probably not fair since he is 724 and he's not gonna be able to stagger.
So like
But we
a
do have a
heads.
department head that's here.
Absolutely.
How much of it was took advantage in your office, Angie?
Well, there's 12 of us, and I've probably had 9 of us that's taken leave. I've had 2 that were very close to maximum.
2 of the 12?
Yes, but it wasn't all that we were COVID positive. I have ones with kids. they've
That's my next
exposed.
question.
Yeah, that's what I was
There's a
gonna
lot of
present.
ways to use those hours, not just COVID positive.
If you had 5, 6, 7, 10 kids, you would have a bunch of cases.
Yeah, what if school was out for 3 months
That's what I'm
and these
thinking.
parents won't be home with their kids,
And
It-
this
it-
covers not only a sick employee,
No.
but children, sick spouse, and there's a various categories that you can be home and still.
You have to
But if Angie
quarantine.
has someone in her office that has 3 kids and school is out.
Yeah.
Then the COVID relief will have to pay
Yes.
that person to stay home with the child that can't get daycare and so forth. Is that correct?
And I think, Jeff, that the question is if school is out in Robertson County and an employee has to stay home with children, is that a qualifying event where that
Yes.
employee at
Yes.
home is
Yes.
going to be able to use their COVID hours?
I think it would be, but if the employee can telecommute, then I think that the way the policy is written, the way the county policy is written, the way the federal legislation was written, it was employee's inability to work or telework that made the employee eligible to receive the leave benefit. So employees, even if school is out and the employee is still able to work from home, then they wouldn't be receiving paid leave. They would be receiving their regular rate of pay while working from home.
Even if they couldn't work from home, they just had to be home, they'd still get their regular pay.
Well, I mean, I guess the Mayor, I think the issue is, if school is out and the employee has to stay home with kids, can the employee work from home? And if they can't, then they would be, as the policy is broad enough that they would receive temporary COVID-19 leave.
Yeah.
But if they're able to work from home, they're working from home as if they were working in the office.
I would think
Did
that's
you
about
get
as
your
broad
question,
as
so you get your question answered?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it would be, the department head would have to justify if they could work at home or they couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's what we're doing now, which we actually been doing.
Well, if I could say, Mayor, I heard the labor attorney loud and clear saying that if we remove the cap, it would give us more flexibility. And I agree, even though I like the cap. But we have in effect put a cap on it if we're going to end it April 1st, this temporary order that we're going to be working under. And so to me, that seems about as fair as we can be.
Well, if April 1st comes and let's say we're still having 500 people a week test positive, then we'll have to extend it,
Come right back here and decide what we do next.
Yeah.
And by then, I think it'd be good for all of us to speak to the department heads and not be put in this situation without talking and feeding, seeing what their opinions are, because they know their employees and their staff better than we do.
That's right, Caleb. And the thing is, I know we're putting a lot on the department heads, but if you don't put it on the department head, then you're putting it on that lady right over there. And I'm gonna tell you something,
That's not her job.
that's not her job, exactly. It's not my job.
That's right.
We don't have an HR person, and we're gonna have to get us one.
We're not gonna micromanage our departments. That's why they are hired or voted.
That's hired or
That's
voted.
exactly right.
So just to confirm, Irvin made because make sure we do this right. Irvin made the motion, Bob seconded it.
And it's basically gonna keep the same policy that we have on the temporary, pages 8 through 11. We're not gonna do anything with the federal because it went away.
Will you do that? Will you say that again? Because it got opened up for discussion for us to vote.
Okay.
That's where you have to do it.
Well, I just wanted Bob, yeah.
Okay, so basically, the motion, from what I understand, he said something.
Take the cap off on the hours, 80 hours,
There you go. Take
and
it
then
down.
it will sunset on April the 1st, as far as the policy goes for the county.
And the FFCRA, the first 7 pages goes away,
Right.
and the temporary COVID-19 leave policy, 8, 9, 10, and 11, stays in effect,
Right.
ending April 1st.
And we should have a lot more information in the next 3 months. It's either gonna go south or it's gonna go north. It's gonna go south.
And if the committee votes for that recommendation, I'll prepare a resolution for the January county commission meeting that will adopt this and also make it retroactive to January 1st.
Retro 1-1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll call a question.
Question being called. Are we ready to vote? Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Chris, are you on there?
Yes, sir.
How you vote, Chris?
And my vote is yes.
Commissioner Eden,
Yes.
Caleb Fuquoy.
Yes.
We have unanimous decision. Glad you know what to do. Is there any more questions that we need to ask these 2 expert attorneys before everybody leaves?
Want to tell them thank you very much
Oh,
for
gosh.
helping making this meeting turn out, because it was one where we had an ending date and we didn't really know what to do. So it did kind of put the committee at the last minute.
Yes, I admit that we was hoping that something would come out of Washington that would extend it or not. We didn't know. Ryan Martin called me today and said that he had heard that something had come out extending the CFF whatever. And me and Herman up at White House, Tennessee, had not seen anything. So I was hoping that something would to sort of clear this water. But we made a decision here, and I'm sure it will go in front of the county commission. Let me say something as the mayor. Some of these departments are going to be left out in this, and it makes for bad morale. And to say that's tough, not a good word to say. I would like for the department heads that take advantage of this, do not watch your Facebook, have compassion for your fellow workers that don't get to do this. We have a lot of people on the front lines that cannot take advantage of this. Some departments will opt out of this because they can't do shifts or send people home. And I think about those departments. And my phone will be ringing tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I can promise you that. I would appreciate the department heads that take advantage of this and do this for employees. That's all I'm going to say about it. I'm not against this, but I know that some people don't get this luxury. And it does make for bad morale. I've been down this boat before, and it wasn't fun. But that's what they pay me the big bucks for, right, Bobby?
And Mr. Mayor, it's not a luxury. No offense to that statement. It's not a luxury. They're doing their job.
Well,
They have to go through the pain and the suffering of this virus.
Well, I'm not saying it's a luxury. What I'm saying is they get to take advantage of something where the rest of them won't be able to.
And I think next time we need to, I know me personally, I will be speaking with all the department heads before any vote like this gets happened, because they're the ones that, they're the ones that know their people well and know who's going to be affected by it. So moving forward, I think that it's our obligation and duty as this board to reach out and hear it from them, moving forward.
I know the mayor takes a lot of pressure in phone calls. I appreciate the job that you're doing, but he has blocked a lot of that coming to us as commissioners. Because I came into this meeting as a fresh individual saying, what am I going to do? I didn't worry about it. I didn't get the phone calls. Okay? Mayor, thanks.
Well, it started yesterday morning when all this come up, and it wasn't pretty.
Well, it was 4th and 1. Okay?
All right. I need a motion to
Move
adjourn.
adjourned.
So move.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you. And you guys, you have that deadline on April 1st. Things still look like
Thanks,
they're
everybody.